Christmas time is officially here, friends, and I cannot believe that we are 2 weeks away from Christmas. It honestly crept up on me. So while I was going to do another episode on Champagne today and tell you about my trip in September to visit the Champagne region, I'm going to save that for next week so that today we can talk about my top recommendations for Christmas wines so that you still have ample time to go out and shop for these wines in the coming days. Hi friends, my name is Sarah and I'm a certified sommelier and host of the Wine CEO podcast show. And each week on this channel, I talk to winemakers, wine industry professionals, and I highlight various wine topics to make wine a little less intimidating and more fun and approachable to the average consumer. So let's go ahead and dive into today's episode talking about my top picks for Christmas. So Christmas is the most magical time of the year. It is by far my favorite holiday, but it can also be a little stressful, right? You're trying to balance family dynamics, the hustle and bustle of the season, and honestly, the last thing you want to do is make things more complicated with wine. So what I'm going to do is give you my top recommendations that I always have on my Christmas table, and I feel like these are tried and true pairing options with a lot of different foods. If you are celebrating your Christmas with a specific dish, maybe your family has a tradition of serving a particular meal, feel free to send me an email or an Instagram message, and I am always happy to offer personalized recommendations. It's one of my favorite things. I love food. I'm a big foodie and I love pairing food with wine. So send me a quick note. I'm happy to reply quickly with one of my favorite recommendations with that particular food. But what I'm going to be talking about today are wines that are pretty diverse when it comes to the ability to pair with a lot of different food options. So hopefully these will be helpful for you, even if you're not looking for a specific wine to go with a particular dish in your family traditional Christmas table. So first up, I always have a couple bottles of bubbles lying around. The last 2 weeks I've talked about champagne as well as some affordable alternatives to champagne. You have to have bubbles on Christmas, right? Whether it's Christmas morning to have with mimosas or during Christmas appetizers right before you have your meal. Champagne means celebration. Everybody loves having a little something sparkling and bubbly in their glass. And so I love having a glass of champagne. I splurge a little bit for Christmas because we're celebrating and it's a wonderful time with family. And so I always love to have a nice bottle of champagne. But if you're looking for some affordable options, again, go back to last week's episode. You can check out some other options that are going to taste similar to champagne or some that are very different, but are going to be a really fun, bubbly option. The nice thing about most sparkling wines is that they're going to have high acidity, which makes them really great pairing with food, and the bubbles help cleanse the palate. So it's going to be really great if you are trying to get folks kind of ready for a big meal, or if you want to try and cut through some of the flavors, if you're pairing with a lot of different dishes with some competing flavors. Sparkling wine is going to be a great option because it really helps cleanse the palate between bites, and it's also going to pair with almost any dish out there. Truly, it is an incredible wine, just as a whole category of sparkling wines, right? It's a really great option when you are looking to pair with food because it's going to work with a whole spectrum of different flavors. So I'm going to give you kind of a white wine go-to, a red wine go-to, and then we're going to talk about a quick bonus as well. So I'm going to guess that many of you are going to assume that my pick will be Chardonnay because it's kind of your go-to winter wine, right? It has a little more full body characteristic, rounder flavors. And while it is a really great option for Christmas, and if you love Chardonnay, go for it, I'm actually going to highlight Chenin Blanc. So I love Chenin Blanc. I think this is a great variety that does not get a lot of love and attention. And during holiday season, I think it's a fabulous pairing because it also, similar to Chardonnay, has kind of some of those more fuller, rounder characteristics. It has really great apple notes and some honey characteristics. It's not sweet though. It's typically made as a dry style wine, but it has these really great kind of fall flavors that pair really well with a lot of dishes that would typically be on a holiday table. Also think about a lot of kind of scents of Christmas time. You know, you have like cinnamon and baking characteristics and your evergreen scents. And I just think it's a really great wine that pairs well with all of that. Usually you can find a lot of amazing options coming out of the Loire Valley in France. So Vouvray is probably one of the most famous regions that's making amazing Chenin Blanc coming out of France. You can also find really great Chenin Blanc coming out of South Africa. There's great Chenin Blancs that are made truly all around the world. And so I would definitely recommend checking out Chenin Blanc this holiday season. I think it's a little different than what your guests might typically expect for a white wine, but really amazing flavors, great characteristics, and they may not be as familiar with this grape variety, so you can surprise them with something new this holiday season and let them know that you learned about it here on the Wine CEO podcast. Okay, now my red pick is going to be a bit of a crowd pleaser because I think you have a lot of options on Christmas where you could definitely go really, really bold. Let's say you're serving prime rib. Maybe you want to go with something that has a little more tannin structure to it that's still really acidic. Maybe you're going to go with something like a Brunello de Montalcino, or you're going to go for a Cabernet Sauvignon. So if you're serving something that's really heavy or fatty, you might go for something like that. But if you are serving like turkey or ham, or maybe you're doing like a pork tenderloin, you may not want to go with something that's quite as heavy. And I found that on a lot of Christmas tables, especially in the US, you might have a couple different options. You might have 2 or 3 different proteins, or maybe you have some type of like starchy side dish along with 1 or 2 proteins. And so I think it's important to find something that can be really flexible across different flavor profiles and different styles of like protein and side dishes, etc., things like that. So my pick for Christmas is always a Pinot Noir. And hear me out, because I think when a lot of people hear Pinot Noir, they're expecting like light, fresh, fruity, and they're like, well, wait a second, it's like usually cold around Christmas and you want something that's really bold. But here's the thing about Pinot Noir. One, it has really high acidity. High acidity makes it an incredible food pairing wine. Second, you'll find that there's a lot of styles of Pinot Noir that actually have a lot of earthy characteristics, these kind of like dried leaves and even a little bit of kind of like forest floor characteristic. Hear me out, I know that sounds weird, but think about the kind of like fall flavors, mushrooms and cinnamon again, and kind of like toasted oak and some of these characteristics that you imagine around the Christmas table. And so those are actually often found in a lot of styles of Pinot Noir. And so if you find Pinot Noir even with a little bit of age on it, it's going to be a really smooth, sexy, velvety wine that's going to pair really beautifully with your Christmas table. And again, I think it's important because you have a lot of different dishes on your Christmas table. You might have a lot of different flavors going on. You want to be careful to not necessarily pick a wine that's going to overpower some of the lighter flavors on the table. You spend a lot of time preparing this food, friends and family have brought dishes, and so you don't want to immediately overpower it with a really bold wine that's going to mask all of the flavors in the food. So I think Pinot Noir, again, is a really great option because while it tends to be a little bit of a lighter grape, it's not going to have that same tannin structure that some of those bolder red wines might have. It is going to have a really delicate, velvety finish that's going to be a beautifully complex wine, but is also going to pair with a lot of different flavors on your table. I also think it's a bit of a crowd pleaser because, you know, for folks that love red wine, sometimes they can be picky. Maybe they're going to really have a preference, but I think that with Pinot Noir, you know, folks are going to be happy. Again, you can find some really outstanding Pinot Noirs coming from Burgundy, France. If you're looking for some that are going to be a little more affordable, maybe you're going to look for Pinot Noirs coming out of like Oregon or even New Zealand. There are some amazing Pinot Noirs coming out of Germany these days, and you can also find some outstanding Pinot Noirs coming out of California. Think like Russian River Valley. There's going to be some outstanding Pinots coming from all of the Napa and Sonoma regions. So you can definitely find a wide breadth of price points for Pinot Noir. And again, if you can find some that have a little bit of age on it, I think you might even find that to be developed and complex around a lot of the Christmas flavors. But I think this is a really approachable wine with, again, high acidity that's going to be a really great food pairing wine, and it is always a crowd pleaser. So those are my top 3 picks for Christmas. I love having some type of bubbles, definitely like a bottle of champagne on the table, having a Chenin Blanc as well as a Pinot Noir. But I'm gonna give you a quick bonus here because I love around Christmas time to enjoy a little dessert wine, and I think it's the perfect time of the year to have something like a tawny port on the table. Tawny ports tend to have really like nutty characteristics, and they have this really developed, almost like syrupy kind of sweeter characteristic. So it's perfect in the evening when you're sitting after a big Christmas meal and maybe you're just snacking on some Christmas cookies. Port has this like really phenomenal, again, kind of like nutty, warm characteristic that just makes you feel like you're sipping on dessert. So I love a good tawny port around Christmas. This is also a great time of the year to enjoy a Vin Santo. If you love sweeter wines, Vin Santo is an awesome pick. Again, love pairing it with Christmas cookies, and it just is a wonderful sweet dessert wine to be able to end your meal with. So no matter what you are eating or drinking this holiday season, I hope you have an absolutely magical time. I hope that your family finds all of the hope and peace and joy in this Christmas season, and that you get to enjoy some well-deserved, relaxing time with loved ones. If you haven't subscribed to the Wine CEO podcast yet, please do so now. It helps me a ton for folks to be able to find the show, and also it makes sure that you don't miss any exciting wine content, like that awesome episode next week that I've been dying to tell you all about for a few weeks now with my trip to Champagne right before the harvest. There's a lot of great content coming your way, especially in 2025, so you don't want to miss it. If you have any questions about this episode or wine in general, you can send me an email, sarah@thewineceo.com, or shoot me a DM on Instagram @thewineceo. Until next week, friends, I hope you drink something new and delicious, and I will catch you all in the next episode of the Wine CEO podcast.